Hello everybody, and welcome to Space Parasites 200 Days, where we continue on from our previous quest of trying to escape the asteroid, destroy all empires, mechanoids, and return to the void. When we last left off, we actually failed our initial attempt, so I came back with an arcane tree that I named Robert, who has effectively been making all of our colonies food. However, I was far from out of the woods, as we had no component production, and since half my electronics are in extreme temperatures, they break a fair amount of the time too. Additionally, orbital traders, which are few and far between already, will really only consistently buy sculptures, so I really had to buckle down with art school. Fortunately, I was still getting raids from celestial pirates too, which if stripped them of their vac suits before they died, I could also sell those for a marked up price. Luckily, he had 3 components on him too, which I was able to snag off him after he fired an incendiary launcher right next to me and in turn blew his load all over himself. As usual, we let the vacuum of space do the rest of the work, leaving behind a tasty dead body that could be eaten with our mushrooms later, and only a few days after receiving the components, one of my batteries broke again, immediately dropping us down to only 1 component. Then an eclipse came, though I'm sure that wouldn't have a significant negative impact on my power consumption. My second spawn grew enough to where it can now safely exist outside of the test tube I shoved it in, and then we had a significant negative impact on our power consumption, as with the heaters and research bench combined, we were no longer excess, but I couldn't do anything about it because I had to spend all my components fixing the batteries. So I just powered down my research bench for now, opened up my lab door, and installed a lab vent so that the heat from Robert's room could affect the hydroponics too. In my infinite luck though, my batteries broke again. My only hope at the present moment was selling all the sculptures I was making to a trader to prolong my colony's death at the hands of lack of components. And I was getting pretty good too, and had made several by now. My third prisoner went berserk, so I asked them politely yet firmly to stop. One of my parasitic spawns got their first trait. In my infinite luck, my seal door broke as well, but I'm out of components, meaning I just needed to construct another door. I was producing an excess of mushrooms, so we would be okay for now, even if the heat shut off. Fortunately, it didn't, and a cargo pod holding some sus milk dropped nearby too. It looked like it had estrogen in it though, so I just had the prisoner drink it all, and then we parasitized them, incubating our third spawn. They almost bled to death from the infection, and we got an anomaly shard quest, but since we have no transportation, we kind of just have to ignore it for now. One of my heaters broke, so I pulled the 500 IQ strategy, replacing it with a non-broke one, even though this one was literally in a safe environment, so it had a much lower chance of breaking anyway.
Just my luck.
It's not yours.
Anything to keep the mushrooms growing though, because as long as we have food coming in, I can keep speed growing my parasitic spawns. And they're beginning to learn how to tend the fields themselves too, while I continue my art school maxing. Though thankfully more DoorDash pirates keep showing up for me to immediately hunter pounce them, before ripping their vac suits off and letting the vacuum of space have its way with them. This prisoner had a belief crisis over their situation. I couldn't imagine why though. Then I guess in protest they decided to remake a Taco Bell commercial, and started vomiting and shitting themselves while rolling around on the floor. And things finally took a positive turn when a combat supplier trader, after over 20 days, showed up. And more importantly, not only were they selling components, they were also selling a shuttle engine too, which I was barely able to afford, both of with all the sculptures I made, and since I remembered I had another vac suit I ripped off somebody in my pocket. It was just enough to buy out all their components too, and we were now so much closer to actually being mobile. We still had a ways to go with needing to research the shuttle, which will need a multi-analyzer, which requires plasteel, and the shuttle itself also needing plasteel, and is fueled by chem fuel, but that being said, escape was now within our grasp. So in the meantime, it was just more base work while we prepared more sculptures for another trader. A cargo drop left a bunch of great value taco meat on the floor outside, and I threw our prisoner on the floor in the arcane tree room, and ripped their vac suit off so it wouldn't become Tynan when their chest exploded, and I had a third parasitic spawn who I've been naming after active members of my community. Welcome to the team, now get in the test tube. And soon after, another Uber Eats order of celestial pirates showed up, so me and my kids went outside and kicked them all to death. And after only a few days, another trader showed up, this time a slave ship, but since they didn't really have anything I needed for the analyzer, and I was actually good on components for the moment, I only used it as an opportunity to sell some of my stuff, as I wasn't ready for another trader this fast. So I was just saving up so I could buy all that I needed from the next plasteel vendor. Plus, shipwreckage landed here, meaning I was basically in the green for now. Yet another pirate Uber Eats order, this time they made me mega brain decision of sending me a genie raider, so I'm not even going to bother showing how quickly they folded, and I just ripped their vac suit off like all the rest. More unimportant shit happened. A low psychic drone caused one of my pawns to start roasting me over thumbnails, or the inhumanely evil experiments I do. I was kind of just ignoring him, though it was bad enough to put me in a daze for a few days, and afterwards nothing of importance really happened for a few days, until we were over the halfway point at day 153, where we got our second combat supplier. Unfortunately, once again, they didn't have any plasteel, but I did get a bunch of components from them, as I did sell all my art school work, kind of fitting it went to a combat supplier. More general labor that was generally lacking of importance, with my spawns growing more and more to term, and finally the first actual pirate raid arrives that is not just a glorified DoorDash order, and has a whole team of 5 all for me to rip their clothes off and sell them to drug dealers, so I can then use that money to build a spaceship. Some of them actually had decent weaponry, but both me and my spawns ambushed them, even though my spawns are still children. Fortunately, half of the pirates here are actually Starjacks, a xenotype with notoriously horrible melee training, meaning my little insect spawns, who have great melee in comparison, are capable of almost holding their own against them. And after I had pushed back the pawns on me, I rushed into the caves to help my spawns, who were doing their best to hold down the Starjacks. My first spawn was knocked down, but he was still alive. However, my other spawn was actually holding his own so much, and even took down the Starjack, who had the first to explode chem fuel all over the cave because reasons. And after I made sure both my spawns were still alive, we got to stripping all the suits off of the pawns. The Starjacks can survive quite a bit longer, but they are still in space, so they suffocate not much later, and they're already downed anyway, so it's basically the same as baseliners, and they taste about the same too. And not even a day later, I got yet another raid, but this one was our first ever mechanoid raid, with a scyther and a lancer. Now, mechanoid raids suck for me compared to pirate raids, not because they're particularly more dangerous or anything like that, but because I can't eat them or strip them of their expensive clothing and watch them slowly suffocate to death. Fortunately, mechanoids do sometimes randomly carry stuff with them, as this one had some components with him, so it wasn't all bad, and just in time too, as our first spawn became an adult who could now do all manner of work. So popping him out and swapping him for my other spawns who would soon follow, and after a few more days, exactly what we need finally shows up. The exotic trader had tons of plasteel, and I originally tried to buy their entire stock, but later settled for only 250, as I'm certain I wouldn't failed a construction twice in a row, sold all my sculptures again. I also grabbed a book on construction to level 8, and some more advanced components, and after that intense bartering session, we could finally get to work on our shuttle, which I started by finishing up the multi-analyzer, as well as another solar panel, because I didn't want this shit going out on me. And after a several day-long research montage, we unlocked the shuttle and could begin construction, as we already had everything else we needed. And generally, luck was back on our side, with shuttle wreckage landing here, as well as even getting a compact machinery meteor fall down, which we had been slowly chipping away at. We were already boiling some of our excess mushrooms into chem fuel, my other 2 spawns grew into fine voracious parasites like myself, and we got started building the ship, and we would soon be able to travel to and from the asteroid. But first, I still needed to have a tantrum and smash the crib in my room that I never ended up using. And getting it finished a few minutes later, we started filling its cargo with gas, as when a shuttle is your main source of transportation, they need to be filled with excess chem fuel from the cargo, because if you run out, you're basically stranded. Unfortunately, it would be a bit longer on our maiden voyage, because we got another raid from some unprocessed chem fuel pirates. They came in another decent sized but not concerningly large enough group, who split themselves into fractions to try and destroy my stuff. Unfortunately, we are still rapidly fast and have general initiation on all of them, so we could divide and conquer them all before they would realize they would soon be turned into biodiesel. However, after brutally murdering the inferiors, one of my spawns crashed out over it for some reason, and attempted to destroy the shuttle over it, which I was not having, so I puppy guard repaired the ship for an entire day, while he just continued to wail on it. Till I eventually just said screw it and arrested him, as I wasn't about to wait for another trader if I didn't have the resources to repair the f***ing shuttle. Resolving that issue, we got a quest for another anomaly flesh piece ambush for a shard, and I decided this was as good a place as any to give our first ship flight to, since I was on a nearby island. Now, flesh beasts themselves, especially with the lower levels, aren't really too much of a threat, as even though they show up in significantly high numbers, and most of them are ranged, they are stupidly easy to stomp into the soil, so that's what we did. Rotting through the settlement, stomping all the flesh beasts into delicious piles of hamburger meat on the floor. And after we finished stomping out all the meat burgers, we found a bionic eye and the shard we were promised, before returning back to our ship and attempting to fly out of here, only to find out that we couldn't directly return to the asteroid. It's no big deal, as we can just fly to another closer island and fly to it from there. Still annoying though that I couldn't just make the return trip. Anyways, getting back, I started researching recon armor, even though it would probably be a few more eons before I was comfortable with using the resources it would take to make them, and plus I didn't even have a crafter yet either. And that crafter thing was actually a bit more severe than I originally thought, as since we live on a fucking asteroid, there's not exactly any wood around for someone to practice crafting. Which was kind of unfortunate that I only realized after I made a fabricator, but also keep in mind we have the shuttle now, so it wouldn't be a problem for too long. But since we'd also been getting a bunch of ancient stockpile quests as I was sitting on the asteroid, and all of them are within 50 chem fuels worth of each other, I decided to just take a solo trip down and go trick or home invasioning to each of these ancient sites, all of which were poorly defended and probably not actual Ancients faction, because instead of sentry drones and wasp traps, there were militaries and unstable OSHA violations, none of which posed a particular threat to me since I'm able to run away from the explosions faster than Made in Heaven. Most of my pulls will just be getting sold, but I did manage to get a fair amount of plasteel, and I even got 6 advanced components, so not a useless endeavor at all. Returning home with the loot, we immediately got attacked by more great value unprocessed Dillingham, which, stop me if you heard this one, tore some of them to pieces with the machine guns, and the ones unfortunate enough to survive have their spacesuits ripped off of them, and then left to embrace the vacuum of space. We got a smelter set up so we could turn some of the stuff on this island that we had already tainted into more steel for components, as I would need a ton of both for my opening cunning plan on how I plan to deal with both of the empires. Completely untested, by the way, for my opening attack against the empires. I'm literally just throwing parasitism and insect supremacy at the wall and hoping that it sticks. But first, it was time for me to make another business trip, though this time I was just chopping down a bunch of trees in order to return home and finally get one of my pawns started on becoming a crafter. And right after we finished researching recon armor, that was 200 days in, with this series now being infinitely more optimistic looking, as we had successfully constructed a shuttle that could now take us off and to the asteroid we were currently calling home. We still have plenty of work we needed to do, but the stage was now set for us to make our opening attacks in the later episodes. But if you enjoyed this video and you would like to see more like it, please leave me a comment down below letting me know your thoughts as well as what you'd like to see next, both Rimworld and otherwise. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing as I upload new long-form content every week, as well as new shorts most every day, encapsulating variety content, including challenges, guides, memes, audience participation, playthroughs, and even theories. Also join the Discord with the link in the description, as well as the pinned comment to become part of the show. But with that being said, thank you all again so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.